Hello, and welcome to this week's Rights in Russia interview. It's June 9th, 2022, and today our guest is Dr. Dmitry Dubrovsky, currently a fellow at the Central and East European Law Initiative in Prague and a professor at the Free University, the Briva Universitate in Riga, right?
No, well, we are online, so it's
You're online.
in Riga, yeah.
Got it. So Dr. Dubrovsky has taught international relations, political science, and human rights at a number of prestigious institutions, including the Higher School of Economics and St. Petersburg State University in Russia, Bard College in the US, and the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. He has held fellowships at the Wilson Center's Kennan Institute and Helsinki University's Collegium for Advanced Studies. He's an expert on human rights and civil society in Russia with special interests in the areas of xenophobia, nationalism, hate crimes and hate speech, LGBTQ rights, and freedom of conscience and speech. He's served as an expert witness in a number of legal cases involving hate groups. Welcome to Rights in Russia, Dmitry.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending the time to share your views on the current situation for human rights in Russia. We have about 30 minutes for our conversation, so if you're ready, let's begin. You recently left Russia. Could you tell us when that was and why you left?
Well, I left after the war was begun, and because of two different events happened. One event I failed to extend my contract with the Higher School of Economics, and I was fired. And secondly, because of the war, I have realized that as well, first of all, I'm not very much safe, keeping in mind my public activity and long-term history of the disagreement with the Russian state, let's put it this way. And finally, I have my kid who will turn 16 in this summer. Mm-hmm. And because they have been announced already, so that he should be registered in there for the preparation to military service, I immediately realized this is the time to leave. Mm-hmm. Because I am not supposed to feed my kids, to feed this monster by my kids. So that was absolutely impossible.
Absolutely. So what's happening in Russia? Is it more than simply Russia waging war? And does it involve internal changes as well? I mean, for example, what's happening in politics and society? And what's the impact of the war on Russia more generally?
Well, I'd say that we still not have the real impact. Because my understanding is most of the people are right now in anxiety, in the panic, in depression. I mean, even those who were pro-Putin, because that was the development. It wasn't absolutely most of the people weren't ready for. And my general understanding right now, we cannot say that we can have something visible or observable in the terms of the development of changing. Currently, is it just immediate shock? So I believe this is most of the people who are still living in Russia. They are describing their understanding of feelings is like combination of the shock, anxiety, apathy at the same time, because this is just tragedy, and we cannot do anything with that. And this is something which is this has a very self-destructive energy, because when you're observing something, you cannot stop. And the people they have not a lot of choice to either to leave or to have a kind of inner exile in the way. And this is and also this, I believe that's the real understanding was going on. It's slowly coming. So this is not something we have got in the whole picture. Even those who are more or less observing the political and military situation in Ukraine war, I believe we are psychologically, we weren't ready, and we are still not ready to perceive it fully. So we are at war, and this is not the war for the month. I'm afraid this is the years, and this is something we should be prepared for. Disregard where we are, and well, I am in the privileged position because I was able to leave, but most of the people, they are in Russia still.
Could you say something about the effectiveness of Russian government propaganda on public perceptions of the war?
Well, just to understand what is the effectiveness of propaganda is you should understand the nature of this propaganda. First of all, that's my personal skepticism was always be over-evaluating the effectiveness of the propaganda. But what was effective about, and it is effective about Russian propaganda, is the Russian propaganda is turned to speak with the majority of the population in the language their population is looking for. So this is not something which is the propaganda infiltrated to the mindset and change it. I can see the situation in the just opposite direction. So this is the, let's say, Weimar syndrome, which had been always hidden in the substantial amount of the Russian elite mostly. And now, well, not now, since the Putin came to power already in the beginning of 2000, they're slowly, step by step, these expectations had been moved to the media, and media started to translate all this anti-Westernism, all this narrative about traditional values, the Russian greatness, so forth. That is the kind of all the narrative which deeply concerned with the Putin path to the authoritarian regime, and where we are right now. And I believe this is the effectiveness. One of these effectiveness is just how the Russian media repeating or mirroring the language and narrative of substantial amount of Russian population. This is the one story, and this is not the influence. It's vice versa. It's just a mirroring. And secondly, during these years, the effectiveness of Russian propaganda wasn't rather to propose the alternative picture of the world. No, this is not my idea, but I do like this very much. So there's the main idea of the Russian propaganda always been and still remain to blur all the possible lines between the truth and the non-truth, between the truth and lie, and propose so many versions of everything to destroy even the option the truth is possible to achieve. Well, it's very interesting to observe, for example, to follow let's say with the Dutch flight MH17, right? When the flight was crashed, was hit by the Russian control, Russian-backed separatists. So the Russian media has proposed, they started to elaborate as many versions as possible. It was Ukrainian flight. No, there was the full of dead bodies. No, it was not Ukrainian flight, but it was a Ukrainian force who did it. So they reproduced there so many versions simultaneously. Disregard of these versions are contradicted each other, but nobody cares. What was important, so just to destroy this simple and only truth possible. And this is how the Russian propaganda is working. And that is why in current situation, most of the people, in Russia even, they say, okay, so this is, well, maybe Russian propaganda is lying, but Ukrainian propaganda is lying as well. So this is not truth even possible. And this is why this is the formula which is currently very popular. It is so complicated. We will never get the truth. And this is the direct result of Russian propaganda, which destroy, again, so this propaganda against the Soviet type propaganda. Soviet type propaganda normally try to propose the alternate version of the world. But Russian propaganda is not. So Russian propaganda is trying to destroy all the possible narrative, more or less coherent to the reality.
So it leads to kind of an apathetic response, right?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
can't
And the
do
variant,
anything, right?
yeah, that's true. And the variant, so if you're supposed to respond, so you should concentrate on the so many different versions at the same time.
Right.
And they have no logic relations to each other, but nobody cares again, because this is not the plan. The plan is just to destroy the whole idea, so that the normal and rational world exists.
Right. You know, there's daily coverage of the war in Western media outlets as well. So, from your perspective, does Western media coverage generally paint an accurate picture? I mean, what's your sense of that?
Well, I should confess I'm following regularly. I am able psychologically. I cannot read a lot, but I am following mostly Medusa. So this is the Russian media, and I think that most of the Western media, they're being very accurate, and they try to be even less emotional, as I would expect, because that is how the standards of the journalistic work I do understand. So this is the standards of journalistic work. They require it to be as neutral as more, to keep the more neutrality as is it possible. But I'd say the current situation, this neutrality could be considered by the observers, especially from Ukraine, as not a sympathy, but just kind of imbalanced approach to the situation, because I believe that is despite of the certain complexity of the situation, we do know who is on the right side of the story, and that is why I'm not always sharing this idea that the principles of neutrality should always overcome our sympathy to the Ukrainians. Let's put it this way.
Absolutely. So switching now to your professional life, you've taught at a number of Russian institutions of higher education. And we're wondering how the war has affected academia in Russia. And also if you could say a little bit about how Western universities are reacting.
Well, about Russian academia again, so the academia, even more conservative institutions everywhere, and it's very slow changing in comparing with the other institutions. Let's say that is not a business. So we will I'm afraid is that, well, just today, just now, I participated online in the defense of the students of the Higher School of Economics in St. Petersburg. And I just realized I'm listening and thinking they are still there before the war, in all the possible sense of this word. They are observing, they are analyzing the situation and stories. That was a political analysis. It was the department of the political science bachelor degree defense, and that was very nice. But almost all the topic, all the situation right now are dramatically changed because of the war. And that is probably a Russian academia. They are still, this is the kind of very slow changing situation. That's what is the Russian academia is Russian academic fate for the nearest future, because that is the one of the biggest tragedy. The Russian academia was the part of the world, and it's remained the part of the world, but it had been already visibly isolated and will be isolated more and deeply for the nearest months and years. And especially it heated those who had been a part of this international integration. So there's the most advanced, most actively internationally recognized scholars and students. They've been, they should either leave the country or just to cut off these connections between, there is not possible already to be a part of the state institutions and collaborate with the foreign scholars and foreign institutions because of the general academic boycott. A couple of days ago, we have published our op-ed with my colleague from the Tampere University, Gleb Yarovoy. when we are trying to explain that is that the blanket academic boycott in our situation, this is the very best contribution to the Putin's totalitarianism, because this is exactly they hit it there. That is not, well, my favorite formula I've invented. I'm proud of it very much. So this is not collateral damage. This is the friendly fire already. Because that is the most of the, well, I'm not pretending to say that all the people who were the part of international collaboration, they are liberals. They are not. They shouldn't be. But this is the people who were ready to collaborate. They were ready to talk with the foreign academia, with the foreign scholars, with the international community. And that was the bridge. We can share the experience, opinions, and at least that was the kind of dialogue. But now is dialogue stopped. I do not see the option right now to continue, and I do understand why. And this is the question for those who are trying right now to be in the science, in the art and science currently differently, but this is the different. They challenge differently because of the, well, you know, humanities, social science, they normally have just their head ready to move, while the people who are doing the natural explorations, they should have a lab, and they cannot pack their lab into the luggage and move with the lab abroad. And that is the disregard of that. So I'm afraid it's currently differently, but the academia in Russia will be, it is already happening, and will be seriously decline because of and that is the very visible degradation already happening in all direction, in direction of higher education, in direction of science, in direction of the arts. Because of the arts is the ideology mostly, science is mostly economics, because this is not enough to supply the serious and especially fundamental research in the area, because everything is spent for the war. And the higher education right now, because of self-isolationist program already declared. So there's Russia is left the Bologna system. Russia is declaring to stop the so-called Western imposed theories and systems of the education, including the, for example, liberal arts education. I used to work very much within the Smolny College up to 10 years. I used to work with the Artes Liberales College, where it's currently the declared almost extremist organization. Like, for example, Bard College, who was declared undesirable organization, Artes Liberales as a system of the education has been declared, you know, suspicious, and, you know, that's the non-suitable to the very specific Russian system of higher education, whatever that means. So that is I'm afraid this is the plan of degradation and destruction, what had been announced right now. And it's of course that's under official declaration. So all we have a very special, very nationally oriented and civilizationally different approach to the science of higher education. That is, I believe this is just a fake, because there's not possible to have a national educational system, especially in Russia in the current context.
And what would you advise Western academic institutions to do in this situation?
Well, I would try currently the Western academic institutions, they are not independent from the national governments. And national governments predictably declared the total boycott for the national institutions in Russia, which is I have nothing against, because this is the most of the Russian institutions, they proved to be the part of the war machinery when they have signed the pro-war petition, where they openly and clearly supported aggression in Ukraine. But what I would recommend for the international community, and this is my request to everyone, in this field to accept, to keep the personal contact, to think how they're not only Ukrainian, which is absolutely natural, and that was the priority, should be priority, but still a part of the Ukrainians there should be Belarusian, Russian scholars who are either leaving the country or supposed to leave because they've been persecuted or protesting against the war. And in this regard, that's let's say European and American and Canadian institutions would be great to have something for them. This is not the direct, let's say, charity. This is just the development of the very potentially interesting collaborations and developments within the different. Let me remind you, that was the very serious contribution, like the scholars from Turkey, how they seriously invested into the development of the Germany institutions when the Erdogan organized the academic cleansing in the Turkish higher education. Substantial amount of the Turkish scholars, they strengthened in this educational system of the Germany, not only Germany, but Germany in the first line. And secondly, I would say that it's important to keep open the doors for to the Russian students. And this is my special pain, because I left substantial amount of students behind me in Russia. And I do not see their future in current Russian higher education system, because unfortunately I teach them human rights. This is something which cannot be fashionable topic in the current context in Russia. And that is why I'm dreaming to help them to find their path to the different education institutions. But unfortunately, for the substantial institutions, that is currently not either direct ban for Russian students, or just the numerous logistical and administrative and bureaucratic obstacles, starting with and ending in the payment system, which does not allow them to successfully apply and to be students for the foreign institutions. And that is why I believe that is the very good investment to the, let's say, to the free and future Russia, which I still believe in.
Great. So thinking about now the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia, what's the impact of those sanctions on the lives of ordinary people? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, I'm afraid that is, first of all, Russia is the country with the serious gap between the most advanced and developed centers like Moscow and St. Petersburg and the rest of the country. And I'm afraid that for the substantial amount of the people, the sanctions, they are almost invisible, because of Russia is a really poor country with a very high level of poverty. And that is the people who are normally concentrate on their main task, to survive. And this survival does not connect with any European or American goods or service or something like that. And that is why when they disappeared, and most of them, I believe, especially this is just my guess, but I believe that up to 70 or 80% of the population, they do not pay attention to that, because that is not something from their regular set of their practices, goods, something they are preferred to consume. Yes, this is for us, for the higher educated class, for the people who already had this level of the interest to the different practices, services, quality of the goods. But again, so this is not for most of the Russia. That's why for the most of the people in Russia, these sanctions, they are rather the symbolical contribution, I believe, strengthening to this rally against the flag and strengthening the the authoritarian rule of Putin, because this is the just additional tool to mobilize the people around the Putin. I think all these West, they always try to punish Russia because Russia is starting to rise from the knee, and that is how the these evil West always try to punish us and persecute us because they do not like us, and therefore that is the eternal battle. Because again, so for the most of the people, even right now in Russia, in Ukraine, we are not fighting Ukrainians. Ironically, this is the propaganda. We are fighting NATO. And this is why even Ukrainians, they have a kind of the certain level of, well, I do not say it's empathy, but certainly sentiments. All the poor Ukrainians, because they had been sacrificed by the NATO, because this is how the NATO, paying for their internal battle with Russia by the bodies of the Ukrainian soldiers. So this is the substantial amount of the people they believe in.
We've read that initially Putin's plan was to seize control of Ukraine. That's a country of more than 40 million people in just 3 days. Now the war has been going on for more than 100 days, and I'm wondering how Russia's political leaders could have miscalculated so badly.
Well, for two reasons. First of all, the authoritarian regime is really bad to have the proper and adequate information, because instead of the information, they have a kind of sometimes they were fed by their own propaganda instead of the relevant information about what's going on in Ukraine, because they try to fight not with the real Ukrainians, with the Ukrainian army, with the Ukrainian people, but with the picture from the Russian TV, whereas no army exists. So this is the Ukrainians would celebrate the liberators, and there's the armies itself not ready to fight with Russians, but instead they have got the serious resistance. Well, again, so there's not resistance that they could fully stop the aggression, but it's certainly the resistance which allowed the Ukrainian army to stop the Russian aggression and reformulate the achievable goals. Because officially, as far as I understand, they have planned to take Kiev under control in several days. It should be blitzkrieg in reality. And that is why the reason why after the 100 days of the operation, it was the official information that the Kremlin administration prohibited to use this number in all the state control media, because they try to avoid the discussion, the question how this operation already spent more than 100 days, when it was officially declared, oh, this is just a week or two to resolve the so-called the conflict and to protect how they describe it, peoples of Donbass from the so-called Ukrainian genocide.
And according to reports, in the first few weeks of the war, over 250,000 people left Russia. And according to reports, these are mostly, as you are, young, educated professionals. Is this part of the miscalculation of Russia's leaders? And how will Russia be able to recover from such a loss?
Well, first of all, of course, the Russia is big country, and of course there are different people who has the different attitudes to the situation, and I believe this is not simply young and educated and very well trained people who left or supposed to leave. So here is the interesting story, because that was a kind of pendulum. It was that some people left and they decided they have miscalculated the situation. They went back, and currently they are preparing better to leave. So that's we will have another wave soon, I believe, till the fall, during the summer. But the general issue is we simply don't know who's left in reality, how many and where we are, but what is quite visible right now. So this is ironically, the Russian crisis, more and less repeating the crisis in 1918-20s. Because currently, in the unfortunate situation of the Russian immigration, we have the more or less reinstalled the centers of the Russian immigration, which were the center of immigration in the beginning of 20th century, 100 years ago, literally. Here in Prague, in Berlin, in Belgrade, in the Istanbul. So there is the and all these Warsaw, and this is the capitals which always been there. They had been already the centers for Russian immigration hundreds of years ago, and most of the people they remain here. I visited the cemetery when the substantial amount of the Russian immigration there left here in Czechoslovakia before most of them they died before the war.
Wow.
And that is not very positive, let's say, perspective, because I'm afraid this is the people do understand the price they're supposed to pay for the immigration, for living, because Russia is closing. Russia is not closed society yet, but Russia is closing simultaneously from the both sides, from the side of the European Union and the Western countries, because of the sanctions from the inside, because of this is the regime which is tending to encapsulate itself within this, narrative of the fortress, the special Russia as a special civilization with the unique path of the Russia for the future, and so on so forth. And that is why I believe we will see the part of the transformation within the people, because some people will decide to leave, some people will decide to stay, and that will be interesting development we will observe in the next, I believe, years, 1 or 2 years.
What does this all say about the anti-war movement in Russia? It seems that in the first weeks of the war, there were a number of arrests of protesters, over 15,000, but now the protests are fewer, and I'm wondering why that is, and what's the potential for an anti-war movement in the coming months?
Well, first of all, I cannot say we do have a movement. So this is not a movement. This is the hundreds and hundreds courage people who are trying to protest. But that is again, so this is about so-called exit power. Because in reality, so this is the very dangerous right now to call the war the war. In Russia, if you call it the war, you might be in sentence for 10 days or the 20 days or just a serious fine. And if you're, this is so-called the discreditation of Russian army. But if you're sharing the fake about Russian army activity, whatever that means, you might be imprisoned for 10 years or up to 10 or 15 years in prison. Currently, the colleague of mine, Boris Romanov, who has been arrested, detained in St. Petersburg because of he allegedly shared the fake information about Russian army activity. He is municipal deputy in St. Petersburg. He has been arrested and he accused already in this new article 207.3, which is if he would be pleaded guilty, that might cost him to 15 years in prison. And this is the cost. And this is the people in Europe should keep it in mind. So this is is not a matter of it's a matter of fear already. It's not a matter of the courage. So this is we do have the still courage people who are trying to protest inside the country, but for the most of the people, this is a matter of fear, because that is to be imprisoned for 15 years. That should be serious question whether I ready that a particular people should be could be ready for such kind of challenge or not.
Sure. Thinking about human rights kind of more generally, even before the war began, that the memorial was closed down. Surely that was a significant occurrence. What's the situation for Russia's human rights defenders now as individuals? And is there any hope of human rights organizations continuing?
It depends of their position and their how active they are protesting. If they are not protesting, the regime agree, for example, to keep them, well, to deal with them, let's say, patiently. And again, so here is the difference between the political opponents and human rights activists. Human rights activists there, but in this particular context, human rights activists there who are concentrating on the regular work, they cannot, they have no option to protest. Because if they turn to protest, they would be immediately treated as a political activist, and therefore they would immediately either imprisoned or they should leave the country because of this persecution. And that is why, and even before the war, already after the Crimea annexation, the human rights organizations were under serious pressure because most of them are right now foreign agents. And these foreign agents, they are under serious pressure and surveillance of the state. They don't have foreign money. They have a serious restrictions and irregular constraint to their separation. And they try to do something. They are trying. They keep moving, but this is very difficult to see how the people they trying to do something when the situation when they cannot take a breath. Mm-hmm. And this is of course that in the very narrow field they could do something. They have very narrow opportunity they have to do something in the field of human rights. Mm-hmm. Especially keeping in mind the Russia left European Council, Russia removed their agreement with the European Court of Human Rights, and that is why Russia simply doesn't have the Russians human rights activists. They have this final dream to have this protection, at least symbolical, important symbolical protection from the European Court of Human Rights. But this is the remarkable because several years ago, well, already how many? 5 or almost 5 years ago, the bunch of the Russian organization applied to the European Court of Human Rights, seeking the protection against this foreign agent law. And then in 5 days only, June 14, when Russia already left, here is the European Court of Human Rights finally decided to announce the decision.
I noticed that.
Yeah, this is the tragedy, actually, because there is the decision with nobody interested right now to have, because this is just a meaningless already. It should be it should be done at least a year ago, but yes, certainly not now. It's absolutely meaningless.
Should definitely have happened sooner, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm afraid this is not coincident. I'm afraid this is the situation where the European Court of Human Rights, for a certain reason, try to extend the most radical and sensitive decision to keep the Russia in the frame of the let's say European Court of Human Rights, not to provoke Russia, and this is why probably was very blind policy. Mm-hmm.
So asking for a prediction, all wars come to an end. So how do you think this war will end?
I'm afraid this war never ends normally. I mean, in the nearest several years. I'm afraid it will be frozen. And Russia will take the substantial amount of Ukraine, as it looks like right now. Zaporozhye, Khersonskaya Oblast, Zaporozhye, and LNR, the LNR days, they will be converted to the Russian territories. And this is the delimitation delimitation line will be between the countries. It was the best solution would be the UN or other organizations would keep this peacekeeping forces and just to keep this two different countries separately. And I'm afraid this will be just a frozen conflict. And that because neither Russia nor Ukraine would never agree with the losses, and Russia would never stop. Under the Putin, Russia would never stop to its aggression against Ukraine. So this is why, and keeping in mind that Russia is still the nuclear weapon holder, and and also permanent member of Security Council. I do not see any visible way to stop this. I mean, to stop the war. There's more, maybe military activity would stop, but I'm afraid that will be just a frozen, but not ended.
And how? This is my last question. So, what will you see will you see changes in Russia because of this in their politics, in society? I mean, how is that? What are the trends?
Well, I would say the trends is again, so I can see Russia is isolating. And in this isolation, Russia would be follow the path of the Iran, let's say, with the living under sanctions, declaring the exclusivity and the particular civilization path under the rule of elite, which proved to be less ideological when we normally used to think about them, more ideological and less, corrupted. And that is the possible change would happen in the situation when the Putin should be somehow, let's say, biologically substituted at the power. But we will see how it happens. And I'm not quite sure these changes always means the change to the democracy or to less oppressive regime, because we do have in the post-Soviet space, we do have the Uzbekistan, which is, let's say, bring us more hope in this regard. But we do have Turkmenistan, when the one, authoritarian ruler had been substituted by another, and there is nothing changed, even worse, I would say. Mm-hmm. And that is why I'm not quite sure that I can have the positive scenario in this regard.
So in closing, just want to thank you again, Dr. Dubrovsky, for helping us better understand the situation in Russia, and for the Russian people during this sad time. And we wish you the best in continuing your work wherever you are, and look forward to seeing you again on Rights in Russia.
Thank you.
Take care.